All right, I think we've escaped the traffic just a little bit. We were talking about Ulti and WPay and just how the heck do you find the right income ETF that pays weekly where the price doesn't decline and you can rely on it for your weekly income? How do you find that? Well, number one, I think it all has to do with the underlying holdings. That's where Ulti went wrong. That's why I sold mine because admittedly, I didn't do enough due diligence on the underlying holdings. I kind of thought the managers would, or at least they would pick a few more stocks that wouldn't just absolutely crash. And, they got unlucky with timing. But when you're choosing the right income producing ETF, something that you might want to hold for a long time, over a year, 2 years, whatever, enough time to reinvest, you got to choose one with strong underlying holdings. And right now, I think that is why people like WPay. Yeah, it is much quieter here, except for the dog. Xin chào. Hey, hello. So she knows what's up. She probably has WPay. So WPay has a lot of the big names like Google, Amazon, Meta, but they also have the risky names like Ulti has, like Robinhood and Palantir. But WPay resembles the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ a lot more. And Ulti represents almost like a meme stock right now. And it's not as if it was by design. They designed it to choose really high volatility stocks where they could generate a lot of options premium. The problem is the timing. They timed Lucid poorly. They timed rocket companies poorly. We're talking like down 20% on some of these. They timed the quantum wave great at the beginning. They rode those quantum stocks up. They rode the nuclear stocks up. We're talking Oklo, NewScale, Rigetti, quantum computing. What was that other quantum stock they had? I forget. They timed those well and they got gains from them. The problem is those went down and they didn't get out of them soon enough and they're paying for it. And so the issue is Ulti pretty much ended up in the mud with the other stocks below $5. So Ulti is kind of like right over there with the other $5 stocks. And they've got to somehow get to over there by the high rises, the big condos, and get back to, 3 billion in AUM, because right now they're like at 2.3 billion in AUM. And it's got a lot of investors worried, especially because some of them might have gotten in on Ulti at $10, 9, 7, 6, like me. I got in at 636 and got out at 5, and now it's like at 470. And when we talk about the underpinning holdings of Ulti, we need to consider all the crypto exposure. Like they had Strategy, they have Coinbase, they had BLSH, which was a Bitcoin exchange company. They have IREN, which is kind of like a data center treasury company. They have BMNR, which is Tom Lee's Ethereum treasury company, and that one's really tanking. So Ulti, in my opinion, has too much crypto exposure. They also don't have enough exposure to larger, stable stocks that still have some volatility. I'm talking like NVIDIA or Tesla. Like they don't just have to pick these stocks in kind of the $5 to $15 billion range. I think holding Tesla would be fine. Holding NVIDIA would be fine. You still get the volatility, but you get a little bit more stability than with something like Rigetti or quantum computing. Another problem I've seen with Ulti is that when they take on a position, they do so without dollar cost averaging into the position. So HIMS is a perfect example of this. They bought $143 million worth of HIMS, so $143 million into one stock, but they did it over the course of 3 days, which meant that their average price was like 50, 51, and then they got one in at 55. But that's just not enough time to really establish a position. And it means that it can either go really well for them or really poorly for them. And as managers of capital, as people who want to mitigate risk and get a good risk adjusted return, I think buying too much stock at one time is not the right way to do it. Of course, I'm just talking with hindsight, and maybe the managers have that hindsight now where they're going to start, like, instead of doing a $50 million buy here and a $50 million buy tomorrow and another one on, Friday, maybe they'll do $25 million chunks and really get a broad range of prices in their stock selection so that when HIMS does goes down to like 42, which is where it is now, they get the benefit of that. They still write options on it without being concentrated at the $50 range. So I think if you are looking for a weekly income ETF, I don't think you need to totally write off options trading. Instead, look for something that has stocks you really like. Look for managers who are good allocators, good traders, and who can mitigate risk in their trading. And don't hold anything with too much concentration in one position. And don't look for anything that has too much performance driven by one position. I remember how I think quantum computing and Rigetti, NewScale, and Oklo were really driving the performance of Ulti, and some of the other stocks weren't keeping up their end of the bargain. It's raining now. Weren't keeping up their end of the bargain. And so when those stocks started to fall, Ulti really tanked as well, but the other stocks couldn't hold it up. And one of the reasons I'm talking about, specific ETF selection here, not that I'm recommending any, is that there are other ETFs that are coming out that are similar to Ulti. There's one even called ULTY from Rex Shares. There's another called, I think, KYLD from Curve. And I believe Neos is also going to be launching an ETF. And all of these are kind of in the options space where they're going to be selecting stocks. They're not going to be tracking an index of any sort. They're going to be selecting stocks similar to Ulti. Even the ULTY fund has, I think, about 5 positions in common with Ulti, including some of the risky ones like Figma, which blew up in Ulti's face. So if you got out of Ulti and you're wondering what to do with your money, and you're looking at some of these other covered call ETFs, or maybe some of these other options ETFs or WPay, just be cautious and think about the underpinning holdings and the strategies that the managers are using to mitigate downside risk. I think any of them know how to generate income, but how to lower the risk when the stocks decline is even more important. So that's my little talk on here. So if you are interested in some of these other ETFs that are coming out, I'm going to be covering them on this channel. I already cover Ulti. Still, I'm going to until it goes to 0 or until it goes to 10, who knows. I'm covering WPay as well, and there'll be more to talk about in later videos. So thanks for watching, guys. See you in another one.